guys, I'm going to be showing you today how I painted the Caribbean shallow water in this painting. The reference photo was done by Wave Slider Photography, which I have linked below. And if you get a chance, definitely check out his photos. They're pretty amazing. This painting was done on an 18 by 24 inch canvas, and as you can see, I am putting in the colors that I used. I'm going to also link them below, as well as the paintbrushes that I used. So I hope you guys enjoy. Thank you. So I started off using a 2-inch flat brush to put in the sky. I just used a little bit of ultramarine blue with some white, and I just kind of blended that down, and then put in my water line. There I used a phthalo blue for that back farthest point of water, and then I just started putting in the cove there, just to kind of give myself a little bit of an idea of where everything was going to be placed. And then I started putting in some cobalt teal and white, and I kind of just started blending that in with the phthalo blue. And as I got closer and closer to the shoreline there, I used less and less color, just more of my titanium white. And it's okay, like I didn't worry too much about getting everything perfect, because there's so many different colors and things in the actual water that it's okay if it's not 100% perfect. I then started to put in the sand ripples, so I put in lines with just some gray, and then I wanted to go ahead and blend that down, but before I did that, I wanted to let it dry a little bit. So I went and started just blocking in my ocean cove part with just Mars Black. Some people don't use black. I like to. I feel like I can build so much more like highlights on top of it if I use my darkest darks. So then I just went in and I started blending out those lines kind of in a like C or like a U shape kind of, but the thing with that is I made sure that as they got closer to me, the lines got wider and they were darker, and then as you get farther away, of course everything kind of gets thinner and it gets lighter. So I started just blending those out, with the lines, making the little U shapes. And then I'm putting in just a little bit of some titanium white mixed with a little bit of the phthalo blue there for the sun peeking through the cove, for just like the water on top, the highlights. So now what I was doing is I was going ahead and splattering paint color. These are going to be the rock part in the very shallow water where it gets closer to you and closer up by the shoreline. That's going to give the illusion of some cool like rocks and things like that in the bottom of the, right in the sand. With that, I used just some grays. I really liked the kind of like gray blue color, and then even some like whiter or lighter colored rocks. And you can just splatter them on, or you can go ahead and I think I did some just by putting a little round brush on and just do random places. So then as I went through, I started just kind of putting in, this is the part where I'm doing the light glares over the top of the water, kind of like the refragmented light. I used a yellow and green, a very bright yellow and green, just to kind of give it that effect of the sun hitting it. And then I started putting in just a little bit of that shoreline there. this was all kind of like a back and forth process for me. I'm not one of those painters that paints like one thing at a time. I am kind of all over the place, so I apologize for that. I'm really bad about that. I mean, I have an end in mind. I just, I kind of get carried away. So sorry this isn't like, in a perfect order, but this is how I like to do things, and kind of gives me a chance to let things dry so that way I can kind of come back to it if I need to layer on top. So right now I'm just putting in more refragmented light. I always tend to start darker and then I build my highlights on top. So eventually I'll be putting in some white refragmented light, so that way that'll be the brightest spots on there. Of course, I did put a little bit of burnt umber mixed in with that sand color. And I did, for the sand color, I actually used I used cadmium yellow and a little tiny bit of the purple that I have, and it kind of mellowed it out a little bit. That's what I like to use for my sand colors. All I'm doing here, and all I have been doing, is just putting in those light glares continuously just throughout the painting. And that's what really builds it up and gives it that illusion of those tropical bright waters, the refragmented light on there. I also brought some of the Cobalt teal in from the back, so it kind of looks like it's kind of just all scattered about. I did darken it up a little bit and put some of that Cobalt teal in there. So basically that's just kind of what you're doing, is just putting layers upon layers upon layers, and until you're satisfied, basically. So when you're putting in your refragmented light, you really want to try to aim for kind of squiggly diamond shapes, and you want the diamond shapes to get bigger as they come towards you. You can kind of see it now that I put in that really bright light color. But yeah, you just want to make sure that you're putting in those diamond shapes. That's what's really going to give it that effect of kind of like some ripples, and then of course that light in those shallow waters. When I moved on to the ocean cove up there, I just started kind of layering some, I did some burnt umber, raw sienna, and some titanium white, and I kind of started off really dark, kind of putting like, darker shadows in there, and from there I just keep building and building. Again, that was just a very back and forth process. So I'm still working on putting in that light, and as you get up to the shoreline there, you want to make sure that you're really putting in those, lighter parts by the shoreline with the water washing up against the sand. Pulling in some more of the phthalo blue. And don't be afraid to get those paint splatters on there in the very beginning. I think that I could have even gone heavier on that. It really looks cool when you start layering on the top part of the water. So I started putting in my dark shadows there on the sides of the inside of the archway of that cove. And I'm really starting to pull back my deepest, darkest shadows. Like I said, it is just so back and forth. I probably go a little overboard when I'm doing my lights and darks. I just keep layering until I feel like I'm content with it. I put a lot of darks in, and then I go over it with some lights. And all I did was I just kept using a mix of, like I said, the titanium white, burnt umber, raw sienna. I did put in a little bit of the Mars black just to kind of give it that grayed out color in parts of that cove. I try to concentrate on making the top lighter, and you know, just anywhere that you're trying, where you're seeing like an indent kind of, or where the cave is kind of like going in, just make sure you're using more darks. And when I put in my darks, I like to take a real light color and kind of put it up against that just to really make it pop and put those highlights on the edges so it looks like there's just a bunch of crevices all over the place in that thing. Right here I'm using more of a grayer tone just to kind of give it more of a rockier look, like a stone look. It always goes through an ugly stage before it gets better. So if you're ever sitting there thinking like it's just not working out and you can't redeem your painting, you can. You just have to hang in there. It'll all pull together. Just keep putting in those layers and lights and darks and shadows and all that. Right now I'm starting to put in my green for my grass. I used a little bit of yellow ochre and a little bit of Mars black. I did darker, so I used the majority of it to be Mars black just to kind of get that dark down so I can make my light grass pop a little bit more. And then on top of that I used, actually when I went back on top, I used a cadmium yellow with my Mars black. And then I decided to kind of take a little bit of that color that I had with the raw sienna and the burnt umber, the stone kind of color, and I kind of just ran it through the water just a little bit just to kind of like give the illusion of it kind of just reflecting off of there. And then I went back through and kind of brightened my sky up. I always do my sky first, but you know, sometimes I go back and forth. I hope you guys like this painting tutorial. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. I'll be posting weekly tutorials on subjects like landscape, still life, and some animal paintings. So if you want to follow, please like and subscribe, and make sure to click the bell to be alerted of upcoming videos. And I will see you next time.